heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine. Measure 110 is what it was, and it passed with 58.5% of the vote. That took effect back in February of 21. Under the voter-approved measure, possession of small amounts of the drugs was no longer punishable by jail time and carried penalties more akin to a traffic ticket. It also expanded access to addiction assistance and other health services. Now, an early study in Oregon suggested that there was no link between Measure 110 and fatal overdoses in Oregon after a year. Critics of the ballot initiative have also continued to blast its enactment, blaming it for the fentanyl crisis and climbing overdose deaths that followed. Quote, "You look at what happened. Open fentanyl, open drugs on the street," said Republican State Representative Jeff Helfrich, adding Measure 110 is an unmitigated disaster. Now, I'm not surprised by that either. I had said I wanted to keep an open mind to this. But I've also said America doesn't do things as well as some other places. People laughed at this initiative when it got proposed because it was a new idea here. This is not a new idea around the world. Like at all. Like not even close to being a new idea around the world. Spain did it. Saw massive amounts of success with it. There have been some others. And so we were hopeful, we, meaning me and some other people who were like, well, let's see what happens, because just say no isn't working. Like it ain't. So try something else. Because my thing with the problem as bad as addiction, it's probably not going to be one thing. The silver bullet fix probably isn't coming. The silver bullets fix, meaning you're going to have to attack this on multiple fronts in order for this to be successful, I think is the way to go. And so let's see what happens. I also believe an adult is an adult, and they're going to do what they're going to do. So at what point do we just draw the line and say, okay, you know what? You can do this. Now, in some of those other places, Spain and Portugal, put a pin in that because we're going there next, didn't just allow you to carry this up on the street, no penalty, whatever. It's like you could go someplace, buy drugs, do those drugs, and then leave said center. But see, if you did that here, oh my God, they build hotels for them to do the drugs in. Oh, I gotta go to work, but this person does drugs in that building, right? And so then nothing will ever get done. Look at food. We have more food in this country than most other countries. And yet some other countries are better at feeding their citizens than we are. Why is that? Because we don't care about feeding the citizens. We care about arguing about how we're going to do it. You can't let them volunteer donate that can. It has a dent in it. Oh my God, that banana's got a brown spot. And if an average American consumer won't buy it, then you shouldn't be able to just give it to somebody who needs it. Those aren't arguments I just pulled out of the sky. Those are legitimate talking points inside the hunger issue in this country. I've told you before, they don't care about you. Not only do they not care about you, they actively hate you. They hate us, dog. They hate us. That's just the reality. Okay? So I was hopeful we would see some decent things here with Oregon, but according to them, we're not. I'm not surprised America isn't doing something as well as some other places. I'm not shocked by that. Lawmakers in Oregon now have overwhelmingly passed a bill that would make possession of a small amount of certain drugs a misdemeanor in the state, moving to recriminalize substances like fentanyl, roughly 3 years after the state became the first in the nation to decriminalize. Again, the measure, HB 4002, will go into Democratic Governor Tina Kotek's desk for her consideration. My guess is she's going to turn this down. Kotek has not publicly said whether she supports the measure, though in late January, local officials in declaring fentanyl a state of emergency in downtown. Again, you can't just decriminalize. You have to decriminalize and then also offer massive amounts of support. I'm not seeing a ton of that. I'm seeing what we decriminalize. You can't just do the one thing. You have to do it all the way around. And plenty of other places did. So, like I said, Portugal had one of the highest rates of heroin addiction and overdoses. So they decriminalized. And then drug-related death rate in Western Europe. They went from the highest to the lowest. 1/10 of Britain's and 1/15 of the U.S. HIV infections from drug use injections. Since decriminalized in Portugal, they declined 90%. 90, man! That's massive. The cost to do what they did with drugs, to decriminalize, work on some addiction issues, work on some centers where people could come and get the counseling, and yes, do the drugs. That program cost a citizen about $10 a year for a 90% drop in HIV infections and to get the lowest drug-related death rate in all of Western Europe. It cost the average citizen $10 a year. Now, when I tell people that streaming services with 7,000 things to watch, that's not a pulled from the air number, that's the number. 7,000 things were on Netflix, and I tell people it's $26 a month, that's too much. So of course that society's gonna tell me $10 a year is too much for HIV reduction. Of course they will. Absolutely they will. This is happening in other places, and it's happening well. Just because Oregon didn't do it well doesn't mean the entire system is flawed.
To all the teachers who said he'd never amount to anything.
That is correct.
Lucky guess. The Stansberry Show on Rock 106.9.
8:45 this morning, let's get you into the National. That show's at Blossom, September on that one. We'll have tickets for you all week, and we'll get those passed out. 243-7625. The toll-free option for the National tickets at 8:45. It's about 3 minutes into the program this morning. We were interrupted over a Amber Alert. And I'm not complaining about that. We probably should be. But that Amber Alert has since now been canceled after a 3-year-old girl was reported missing in the Cleveland area. That was this morning. ABC6onyourside.com is where I'm pulling from. Cleveland television station, that's a local affiliate there, WEWS, reported that the Rocky River police said the suspect was her mother, Kathleen Collins. And police also then let us know that she had a history of mental illness. Investigators said the girl and her mother were found safe in the southern suburb of Strongsville, that about 20 minutes away from where they reported. Not yet known whether Collins will face any other charges, or any charges at all, rather, and my guess is she will, right? Depending on what the facts of that case may be. But if you use or if you abuse services, you are normally charged for that. My guess is you will see charges from that. But that is what we had joined you with this morning. That was kind of breaking as the show was starting underway this morning. But now they're saying they have found them both safe and ready to go there, which is ultimately the best case scenario, right? Absolutely. So this kind of started to break Friday after I was done. I got into this a little bit with my MMS shift, which starts after I'm done here. But this kind of started to break out a little wide after we were done Friday. But apparently the WWE is closing in on Cleveland as the host city for SummerSlam. I'm going to screw this up a lot. I'm going to call it WrestleMania a lot. But SummerSlam, WrestleMania, there's kind of like their AFC Championship games and Super Bowls, right? It's kind of like how that works. And now Cleveland, as I give you a little Macho Man. Where's Miss Elizabeth? Little Macho Man there. But apparently Cleveland now is rumored to be the SummerSlam location. It's close to being pretty finalized here, it sounds like. Last October, it had been reported that Cleveland was a finalist to host the event. And again, you get tax breaks and that kind of stuff. Quote, SummerSlam 2024 has been rumored for Cleveland. Hinted at months ago, I was told through sources WWE is close to finalizing a deal with the Cleveland Browns Stadium to host the event on Saturday, August the 3rd. The formal announcement should come in April. That Wrestling Votes had said in a post. So August 3rd will obviously sound familiar to you, as that will be Hall of Fame weekend, from what I understand, looking at the schedule. And so now you'll have both of these events in town running at the same time, which had some people over the weekend telling me how unlikely it was for Cleveland to be the host city because the NFL's in town and they don't want to compete with one another. Okay, well, I could understand that being a theory. I just don't agree with it. I have a different theory. My theory is that they're not trying to compete with one another. They're trying to work together with one another. SummerSlam, WrestleMania, and what I don't know about wrestling, you could fill the Grand Canyon with, right? You all know that. I keep sport. You could fill the Grand Canyon. But what I do know is it's built on, oh my God, did you see that? Like, it's built on that. It's built off of flying off the top rope. I can't believe what we just saw. Oh my God, so-and-so's turning heel. It's built on the did you see that moment, as a lot of entertainment is. So what's going to be able to supply that? Half the NFL world being in town, half the NFL world being in attendance. And now all of a sudden, Pat McAfee in town for both. Now he can do both, right? Like, it's like, this isn't that hard to figure out, right? Like, this is very easy to see. With the boys, and now they're coming off the top rope in SummerSlam because they're in town for the NFL thing. Both things get people in attendance to their thing now. Both fan bases now have events that they could go to for either. Kind of pulling away from the Canton event to go to SummerSlam. I'm here with my arms like kind of up in the air, shrugged, like it doesn't matter. There's going to be enough people in town where everything's going to be so heavily attended. And now the crossover thing is we can get a bunch of the NFL guys to come off the top rope now because we're going to be where they're going to be. This is easy. I saw a lot of people tell me, oh, there's not enough production staff for both events at the same time. They don't share staffs. The hell kind of pushback is that? That's one of the craziest pieces of pushback I've ever seen. You will hire local production people to work at these things, for sure you will. I know for sure, because back in the day when I was just a part-time radio employee, I was one of those people. They're not. Let's not pretend that the WWE and the NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, have the same budget here, because they don't. It's a complete deal here is massive. The amount of guys who have played, it's been well done. Look at The Rock for money of wrestling, play football. Like, the crossover between those two things and the fan bases are massive. Like, no, but the listeners are, and the show 6-9 a.m. we may have data that proves the 4-day work week works. So production calls would go out there and you would do a bunch of that. I've done a bunch. I've worked for a bunch of things that I didn't know that. Just being really good, it's just not my thing, so I don't know for sure. But like, he's like one of my wrestling aficionado listeners. Like, he just is, right? And he also said, yeah, man, Steve McMichael is going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm assuming Steve's his real name and not Mongo. And he was in pro wrestling. He's like, I just realized that. He also looked this up, that SummerSlam kicks off around 8 o'clock in the evening. And the enshrinement is at noon during that day. So you could go early and then head to Cleveland for the enshrinement. Yes. Do people not know this too? Maybe some people don't. A lot of times when NFL players come in for something like that, they stay in Cleveland. Like, a lot of them aren't staying in hotels down here. Some do. Some will get an Airbnb down here. And Gervasi gets, they rent out all that. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of that. Absolutely, there's plenty of it. But the NFL is so big, and WWE, again, I almost said WrestleMania there. I'm gonna do that a million times while talking about this. I'm so sorry. But like, plenty of those people are gonna stay in Cleveland. Like, back in the day, you didn't have concert venues in downtown Cleveland. You didn't have that. What'd we have? The Palace on the Prairie. Richfield Coliseum, for those of you that don't know. When bands came to town, they didn't stay in Richfield. They stayed in Cleveland. Kiss was late. Blizzard of 78, they were late to the shows. And that's where you stayed. Teams wouldn't stay in Richfield when they came in to play the Cavs. Some did, sure. But a lot of them stayed in Cleveland. It's not that far of a drive. My boss, by the way, splits his time between this building and the Cleveland building. He's able to do that because it's not all that far. It's further than I'd want to drive every day for my job. But could it be done? Well, yeah. I think the first 6 months I did this job here, I was driving from West Park in the Cleveland area. I didn't move down here right away. I wanted to get a beat on where I was. Where should I get the first apartment? Where do I move? Can sales help me with this? It took a little while. And I start working I get here at 5 a.m. I was waking up at 2:30 in the morning to do this job, to commute from Cleveland. So if that can be done to do mornings at Rock 106.9, can the average person go, okay, I saw a little of the Hall of Fame induction, I saw my guy who was probably second, third, or fourth, or whoever, and now let's hit the parking lot and drive up and check out SummerSlam? Sure. Plus, not every NFL fan's into the induction ceremony. They're into some of the other stuff, and let's maybe go to the game. The concert will be kind of